All right, okay. Well, welcome, guys. I wanted to introduce one of my good friends. This is Sidney Reeves, also known as Dr. Fit. Dr. Fit and I, Sidney, we went to high school together. We graduated from Ben Lomond High School years and years ago. And then he went on to bigger and better things. He'll tell you guys all about his awesome life that he's had. Man, I think he should maybe write a book or have a movie about his life. You guys are going to agree once you guys listen to his story. So he's going to talk about his life and then talk about his career with fitness training. So let's thank Sidney for coming this morning.
Thank you.
Sidney.
Appreciate it. Hello everyone, good morning. How's everyone doing? Doing okay this morning? You all made it safe in this cold, brutal, cold weather? My goodness, it's crazy out there, right? I just feel bad for the homeless people, you know? Jeez, it's crazy. I don't know how they're going to make it. Well, so yeah, anyway, I'm Sidney Reeves, also known as Dr. Fit, and I'm very grateful to be here today, first of all. And it's always an honor and a pleasure to share my story, and I hope that it's well received and that you guys can learn from the different aspects of what I'm going to tell you, share with you. So let's go back to begin with, let's go back to high school. Like she said, we went to high school together at Ben Lomond, and what she didn't tell you is how competitive she is at academics.
All right.
Yeah, she was one of the best students at Ben Lomond. Did you guys know that? You didn't know that, did you?
Sidney was too.
And so we had a really good class. Our class was, there was a lot of very smart kids. Okay, Larry Kane, who's now a doctor in St. George. Matt Gardner's a doctor. Pearl Wu's a doctor. Danielle Taysom Miller's a doctor. These are all our classmates we're competing with in AP Biology, right? And so I'm in there trying to keep up. And I'll never forget, my junior year was a tough year for me because my adopted mother, I was adopted, my adopted mother got diabetes. She was diagnosed with diabetes, and it was a struggle trying to play sports, keep up with all the advanced academics like AP Biology and all the other classes. We had AP English, we had AP History, and then go home, take care of my mom, check her blood sugars, give her insulin shots, try and convince her to stop drinking Pepsi, right, and quit baking all these pies and stuff. And anyway, her diabetes got worse, and she ended up losing her legs. So she was a double amputee in a wheelchair. She was also overweight, and so it was hard for her to get up on prosthetics. Okay, and as I watched her go through all that, a couple things happened. First thing happened was I told Mom, I'm going to go to medical school. I'm going to become a doctor. This is a horrible disease, and I want to help people, get better. So we graduated, and I went on to the University of Utah with Larry, Kane, and Danielle. And it was a fun freshman year. It was all about training, right? Larry was on the basketball team, full ride. I was hoping to play some sports at the University of Utah myself. So we just lifted weights, we would train and eat and train, right? Run the bleachers, run hills. Played a year of rugby for Highland, and got into martial arts for flexibility and endurance and discipline. And also joined a fraternity, Sigma Chi. So I had a really fun freshman year, and then in between my freshman and sophomore year, I met a young lady named Marcella. Tell you a little bit about her and her life. Marcella was from Littleton, Colorado. She went to Heritage High School, and she was also 5'11". We were both, used to be, I know it's crazy, but I used to be 5'11". I'm like 5'9" now. It sucks, but I used to be 5'11". I'm still 5'11" right here, as you can see, right? And so we met, and she was telling me that she was here to possibly try out for basketball, volleyball at Weber State. Apparently, she had a rough senior year at her high school. She ended up sleeping in her car because her stepfather was abusive. So she had a rough time and decided to come to Utah and live with her father, who lived in North Ogden here. and then he was going to pay for her schooling. So she just lived in the condos right by the Maverick, down there. So she got here and was really excited about going to Weber State. And after we met, I said, we should just work out together and do some dating, have some fun. So that's what we did during the summer. It was a blast. Then the day before the summer ended, it was like the night before, the last day of the summer, I had packed my car, got it all ready to move to Salt Lake City into the Sigma Chi house, the fraternity house. And she gave me a call and said, hey, don't forget to stop by and say goodbye, and let's talk. And so I went over there, and we stretched out, had some of her famous Kool-Aid she liked to make, and then she read a poem and stuff, that she had written, and we talked about our goals and the things we wanted to do. And we were super excited. We were just so excited about the upcoming year. So we decided to go for a jog. I said, hey, let's go for a jog, and we were talking and running, and we just felt very full of life, at the time. It was all I can describe to you. Very excited, for what was coming, and for my sophomore year, her freshman year. And so we went down to the stop sign there, the road right in front of the North Shore Aquatic Center. We went down to the stop sign all the way to 89, and then we turned around and we're on our way back. And we were about, 3 blocks maybe from returning when we were hit by a drunk driver. And that's when everything changed in an instant. The car was doing about 60, and it was a giant car. And she was behind me when the impact took place. And so the car hit her first. And apparently she went through the windshield and up and over the car, which took her life. So Marcella's life ended on that day, and that's part of the reason I'm here, because her life ended and she was so young, and eventually, down the road, I started to share the story to help others, learn from it and try and give her short life more meaning, So as far as I'm concerned, my legs were shattered. They don't really know how I survived. It was kind of strange. They don't know if I went under the car, if I was flipped up in the air, if I was knocked off to the side. They tried to figure it out, and it was just difficult. I don't know if I reacted in this very millisecond or something. But what I do remember is being in a lot of pain, like so much pain you just pass out. And my bones were sticking out, compound fractures of the tibia and fibula in both legs. And as I lay there, I remember seeing these brake lights, okay? So the driver stopped for a sec, but he didn't get out. They were just sitting there in their car. It was the driver and another guy. And they had been to about 4 bars after work. Turns out that was their routine. They would go and drink after work and then go home, and drink and go home, drink and go home every day. And in fact, they had been arrested for DUI. The driver had been arrested a week before, and they let him go. And now he's hit 2 people. And this is where the story gets very interesting. There was actually a student from Weber High taking his friend home. They had just finished bagging groceries at Stop and Shop, dropped his friend off at the end of somewhere around 2550, and as he turned back onto 2550, the driver got scared and thought, oh, here comes the cops or something. So he did a U-turn and started to come back towards us, towards me. So I put my head down and I thought, I'm a goner, this is it. It was very, very terrifying. And he just went flying by, and he actually ran Billy off the road, Billy Ross, who was like a sophomore here at Weber High, and just like a 16-year-old kid. Then the next car he ran off the road was Rochelle Johnson, who was a 19-year-old girl just getting off work at Kimberly Clark. And so when the driver sped by, it scared the heck out of them, and they're just freaked out. So when Billy came back on the road and made it to us, he saw these 2 bodies, and we were in really bad shape. It was horrible what he saw. So he went into shock. So now Billy's sitting there in shock, but he kind of turned his vehicle, his white truck, to where it was blocking our bodies. And then Rochelle Johnson, as she came down the road, she saw Billy and thought, hey, this kid just killed these two people, right? So they kind of made eye contact as she drove past him, his white truck. Then she went to the 7-Eleven there and grabbed a police officer and came back. When they got back to the scene of the crime, the accident scene, they said that it was very strange, very, it was just a very strange feeling in the air, And the officer did his test and shined his flashlight into our eyes, and they said that we were unresponsive, both of us. So they think I was gone for a minute. And then they were standing there talking. All of a sudden I started screaming and came back. So some sort of miracle took place. I don't know exactly what happened, but definitely grateful to be here. And it was at that moment in time when Rochelle Johnson took my hand and asked me my name. I said, what's your name? It's going to be okay. And then the officer was trying to do CPR on Marcella and trying to resuscitate her. And then all of a sudden I heard sirens. And it's very surreal when you hear sirens and realize that they're coming for you. Okay, you hear sirens and think, what happened? And all of a sudden you hear sirens and it's like, oh, they're just coming for you. It's just a scary feeling. So they load me in the ambulance and take me off to the hospital. And there was a bunch of bone fragments on the scene of the accident. They put in these little bags and took with them in the ambulance to place back in my legs. So I get to the hospital, and Dr. Crosland was on call that night at the ER. And what he did was put these are called tibial nails, okay? So the first operation I had was to put these inside my leg here, and then they just kind of place the bone like a puzzle, and that's how they set the bone when there's compound fractures, okay? So I did it on both legs. This one over here, same thing. So the driver, he gets home, he's freaked out, he hides the car in the garage. His wife wakes up, same old story, where you been? You've been drinking. They start arguing. She sees the car and says, you've hit two people. There's blood and clothes all over the car. He says, no, I didn't, And he says it was just a cow, and then she calls 911 and they're arguing and they record the call. Cops show up, arrest him, take him off to jail, and that was crazy. I'll tell you a little bit more about what happened to him in his trial and the sentencing also. So that's where my life really changed. I wake up in the hospital, I'm in denial, I'm freaked out. I'm wondering where Marcella was. No one's told me yet. I don't find out that she died until days later when they felt like I was stable and that I could handle, being told that information. So it was just a very shocking, intense reality, new reality. And so that was kind of like where I had to create like a new starting point, and try and process one thing at a time, Because initially I was in denial to the extent like I'm telling the nurse to bring in a little triangle, hang it from the bed, and I'm literally trying to work out still and do pull-ups from the bed and thinking, God, I gotta get back to school, And my friends are coming, from Salt Lake, all the fraternity guys coming to the hospital and visiting me, and it was a very, very tough transition to kind of accept and realize that I'm going to be in a wheelchair for a while. So I had to reset all my goals, and I switched to Weber State, and I was in a wheelchair and I started going to school. Thought, well, I'm going to keep my education going. So I declared a zoology major, and started taking classes, and started having lots of surgeries. The doctors in Ogden realized that there was going to be some difficulty with my leg because my right leg got an infection. One day at physical therapy, the therapist actually was picking up this scab on my leg right here, was a giant scab, and about that big. And when she got it off, she found this ugly infection under there. It's called osteomyelitis, and that's when the battle began against the infection. So they got the scab off, took me in for surgery, and they cut a hole in my tibia, which you're going to see on some of the slides. And I was like, I don't really want to be in the hospital. If I can just go home, take care of myself, that'll save me money and just make me feel a lot better. So I had this IV in my arm, and I would give myself antibiotics and take care of my own leg with dressing changes, which you're going to see. And Dr. Ralston over at McCady Hospital said, we can actually take his soleus muscle. You guys remember the soleus muscle? Yeah. And pull it over the right soleus muscle, and pull it over the top of my shin, and try and bring some nutrients and blood to that area and help fight that infection. But unfortunately, the infection ate up the soleus muscle, and they end up throwing that away. So I end up losing a lot of bone, blood vessels, muscles along the way. It's a very long path that I went through. 25 surgeries in 11 years, okay? Eventually, Dr. Crosland said, Sidney, this is getting out of hand. This was one of the external fixtures they put on the outside of my leg to help stabilize the tibia. And there's some pins coming down like this, and you'll see that on the slides also. They took the tibial nails out. On my left tibia, it ended up healing, but it slid, and there's the 5/9, see? So now that's 2 inches, right? So I was happy that it healed. It's very strong, so I could start standing up on my left leg using a walker at first, and then crutches, which was great to be out of that wheelchair, right? So I get to so Dr. Crosland sends me to the University of Utah under the care of Dr. Stephen Scott, who was an amazing guy. He's awesome. My mentor, my hero, right? And he really liked my attitude. He's like, Sidney, you always have a good attitude, even though we're going through all this stuff. And so he said, we're going to have to cut all the infected stuff out immediately and go to some bone stretching, okay? So this right here is the external Spinelli fixation system, Monticelli Spinelli external fixation system. Okay, it's a bone stretcher. And the way it works is the top ring is stationary and the bottom ring is stationary. It came from Europe, right, the technology. And the middle ring moves down these threads. I would turn it with a wrench, small millimeters, like maybe 3/4 turns, It would only move like a millimeter at a time, just a very little bit. And the way they're able to stretch bone is, remember the cortex of the bone? That's the hard part. The outer layer of the bone is super hard, right? So they would do a circular cut around the bone, and then they would start pulling on it. And because there's tension on the bone, it can't heal, right? The osteoblasts, right? Can't do their job, right? Lorene?
Yes.
Osteoblasts?
Yeah, sorry,
right?
I was looking at the interpreter. I have
Oh,
never
okay.
really watched them. So
Okay.
yeah, osteoblasts build.
Right, so the osteoblasts can't start doing their job because the bone is in constant movement. So they're able to stretch the bone and close the gap in my leg, which you're going to see. Okay, so this was on my leg for 1.5 years. It's made of alloy. I'm going to pass it around so you get a feel of how heavy it was, and try and imagine, what it was like to wear it for 1.5 years. And why are you doing this? Because someone drove drunk, right? And so the technology changed a lot from this bone stretcher to this one. This one's titanium and much lighter. But I can tell you, when Dr. Scott said, Sidney, you got to stay active with this thing on, I went swimming with this thing on, and I literally rode my mountain bike up the hill right by the baseball field, Mile Hill, with this thing on my leg. I'll never forget that. I didn't want it to slow me down. I wanted to stay active. I wanted to maintain, my range of motion as best I could. But yeah, it was a tough time, tough 1.5 years. So Go ahead and pass that around. What do you think? Pretty heavy? Awkward? Awkward? Like a monstrosity? I had this bird, you know, like a bird cage cover. It was like I had this cover over it, and it would just rip through the cover, and people would just give me the strangest looks at the mall or something, like, what is on your leg, right? It was crazy. But anyway, it did the job, and they got the two bone endings back together in the right tibia. And then it became a matter of, can we push these two bone endings together and get these two bone endings to heal? That was the issue, right? So I'm going to go ahead and pass this around. This was just a lighter titanium bone stretcher for compression to keep those bone endings together. Okay. So I'm at Weber State. I'm wearing the bone stretcher. I'm taking classes, and a few things happened. One of the things that happened was the driver went to trial, and he was charged with 5 charges. Vehicular homicide, number 1, he killed Marcella. Number 2, leaving the scene of an accident, DUI, driving drunk, swerving, negligent driving, speeding, driving, running people off the road. So, guess what he was sentenced to? How much time do you think he got? Can anyone guess? How much? How much time would you have sentenced him to? Let's try that. How much time would you have given him? Life? How much time would you have given him?
Probably like 30 or 40.
30 to 40 years in prison? Guess how much time he got? 1 year with work release. Yeah, he went to work every day and slept at the jail every night. So it's like, what? That doesn't seem quite right, does it? So how would you feel, right? How would you feel? Upset, angry, bitter, mad at the world? Well, for me, I started to realize that, no matter how much time he serves, it's not going to bring Marcella back. It's not going to heal my leg. So I went a different direction with it and thought, I'm going to expose this situation and help people to learn from it, right? So I wrote a letter to a lady named Oprah Winfrey. Anyone know Oprah Winfrey? Yeah? She's smiling. You know who that is? Okay. She's a pretty popular talk show host. At the time, she was super popular. So I write a letter. I put it in the mailbox, put a stamp on it like I'm writing to Santa Claus. And all of a sudden, I get a call from Oprah Winfrey, right? And it's like, wow, this is getting very real, very fast. And so I'm in conversation with them, Charlie Cook, the producer, and they're telling me how they want the show to go down. And I'm starting to tell my friends, yeah, man, I'm talking to Oprah, I'm going to go on the show. And they're like, yeah, you guys hear about Sid? He thinks he's talking to Oprah. Yeah, remember that car hit him. It probably hit his head, right? And so it was kind of funny, right? But I really was talking to Oprah, and there was a twist involved. They wanted me to actually speak to the driver and try and get him to go on the show. Also, share his side and what happened and how this all came to pass, right? So I call him up and, hey, may I speak to Brett? Yeah, this is Brett. This is Sidney, the kid you ran over, and all of a sudden, awkward silence, as you can imagine. Super awkward. I know it's kind of strange that I'm calling you, but just want to let you know that I have forgiven you, and that's been important for me, in my healing process. And we have an opportunity to go on Oprah Winfrey. Would you be willing to go and share your side story, what happened, let me know. And he's like, well, let me think about it. I'm going through some medical problems myself. And anyway, he ended up accepting, which you're going to see him on the show here in just a minute, which was powerful. It definitely helped a lot of people. Full circle. He stopped drinking. He now shows the Oprah Winfrey Show to his grandkids to help them in their decision making in their lives. So full circle. in that respect. I ended up using the Oprah Winfrey show to become a public speaker. I mean, it kind of kicked off my speaking career. Started going around the nation and talking to kids when I wasn't in school, and it was just very successful. And I love sharing my story to help others, become more aware of these issues like not drinking and driving. And now in today's world, it's not texting and driving, right? We have a new risk. So, be mindful of that and how you could kill someone or injure somebody else, right? Yourself, someone in your car, or someone in front of you, just by looking down, looking up. It's a whole new world, right? It's crazy. So be careful. I'll never forget the day in political science at Weber State, because it was winter, and that thing was very painful to wear in the winter. I mean, the pins, you're going to see, they went right through my leg on different planes, and the cold would go right through my leg. It was crazy. I can't even describe what it felt like. So I was kind of late for political science, and I remember sitting in the back of the class, and the subject of the class that day was the dram shop law. Do any of you know what the dram shop law is? No? Okay, so the dram shop law is a law that states if you have a party at your house and you give people shots and then they get too drunk and go drive and kill someone, those people they killed, their families will come back to sue you for supplying the alcohol. And so now you're responsible. That's the dram shop law. So the bars that gave the driver the alcohol, I sued them. And they all filed bankruptcy. They didn't have insurance like they were supposed to. So I never was awarded any money, which becomes significant when you're trying to pay for $500,000 medical bills, right? And you're saying, hey, I want to continue with these operations, these surgeries, to save my leg. I want nothing more than to save my leg, right? But the doctors need money, right? The hospitals need money. So I was lucky that I was able to continue with surgery, state assistance, and what's called professional courtesy, because I was pursuing medicine and becoming a medical student. A lot of the anesthesiologists would work on discount, and it was wonderful. I was very fortunate and blessed to have that take place and continue with my surgeries. So that day in political science, I'll never forget, they're talking about the dram shop law, and sure enough, some guy stands up, some buff, good-looking guy. This is bullcrap, man. That kid, man, suing my friends. I know my buddy owns that bar. And I was like, And Dr. Reddy calls on me. Yes? And I said, I'm that kid he's talking about. And I put my leg up, put that thing on, and the whole class just went, whoa. And that guy just kind of, oh, damn, and sat back down. Like, yeah, man, this really hurts, and my girlfriend was killed, and I'm trying to have surgery to save my leg from amputation. My mom has no legs. And he was just like, whoa, right? Yeah. And it was kind of funny, I'll never forget. Flash forward, after I was all healed and became a fitness trainer, I got a call from High Altitude Fitness over in the valley, and the physical therapist over there wanted me to cover for him. So I went over there to cover for him, and I'll never forget that Audi that pulled up, and this guy jumps out, and it was that guy from the class. And I was his fitness trainer that day. Okay, you ready to work out? You probably don't remember me, but I remember you from political science. So yeah, I got my revenge. But no, the dram shop law, my case changed the dram shop law. It was amended at the BYU Law School to help future victims, so that there's not so many loopholes in the system, and that actually people can receive the money that's awarded to them in court. So now I'm at University of Utah. I'm having all these surgeries. The infection was gone, but I'm still having trouble getting those two bone endings to heal, right? And it's been about 15 surgeries, somewhere along in there. I've had bone grafts from my hips. I've had fibular graft from my left fibula. I've got skin grafts off my thighs, and this bone's still not healed. So Dr. Scott said there's a surgeon in Flint, Michigan, microvascular surgeon, that might be able to move one of your muscles, that might be able to take your lat, your latissimus dorsi from the left side, and put it on your leg, connect up all the blood vessels, and bring some new blood flow and nutrients to this bone so it can heal. I said, okay, I'll go, talk to him. So me and my friend Shay Stewart jumped in the car and drove all the way to Flint, Michigan so I could speak to the surgeon. He took the case. His name is Dr. Graham Lister, world-renowned microvascular surgeon, flies into Salt Lake City. The operation takes place at University of Utah Hospital, and it's a 13-hour surgery. Oh, imagine how much anesthesia was pumped into my body. Oh my gosh, that stuff's horrible. So he takes the lat out. You can see the scar starts up here and goes all the way down my side. Takes the lat out, sticks it on my leg over the bone endings, takes this blood vessel out and runs it down here to this area. And I'll show you here what it looks like. You can kind of see where he hooked the blood vessel and ran it down. Anyway, the lat just couldn't survive. It didn't have enough blood flow. This is a really tough area to bring blood into. There's just not a lot there, right? This whole area, it's not like somewhere else on your body where you have more blood flow. So it was an unsuccessful surgery, but I learned a lot from that surgery. Probably the biggest thing I learned was bedside manner, because Dr. Lister was kind of an ass. Let's be honest. He was so famous that he was just that guy, with the nose up, and the wound wasn't fresh enough, or it would have worked. Sorry. And every time he came in the room, he had like 10 doctors behind him, like writing out everything he said, and treated me like, the gallbladder in room 5, that story. So when I got to medical school, I had an A+ in bedside manner, right? I remember I graduated from Weber State in zoology, had a psychology degree also, a double bachelor's, and a chemistry minor. And I got this scholarship to go to Tulane Medical School, the alternative medical school down there, Tropical School of Medicine and Health, and worked during the summer after I graduated. I'm still on crutches at the time, mind you, right? So now I'm in New Orleans, and my mentor's name is Dr. James P. Carter. He wrote a book called Racketeering in Medicine. I highly recommend it. It exposes the pharmaceutical companies and prescription drugs, which is real, let's be honest. During that internship down there, I worked in the ER. I'm from Ogden, Utah. I'm now on crutches at the ER in New Orleans. Can you guess what that was like? It was intense. It was like, what's that? Oh, you're shot? Where? In your arm? Here, put pressure. I'll be right back. What, you're shot? Oh, where? You're shot too? And you're shot? Everyone's shot? Everyone's shot.